You know that person, the one who talks the most in the meeting and understands the least of what is being discussed, the one who has an opinion on everything, delivered with absolute certainty, and is wrong about most of it, the one who finishes your sentences with the wrong ending and never notices, the one who, no matter how many times reality contradicts them, walks away still convinced they were right. You have spent time around this person. Maybe you work with them. Maybe you are related to them. Maybe, on your worst days, you have had a quiet, uncomfortable suspicion that you might occasionally be them. This video is about all three of those possibilities, because the psychology here is not just about the people who exhaust you. It is about a mechanism every human brain runs, some more severely than others, and why the people who run it hardest are almost always the last ones to see it. Let me tell you about a man named Daniel. Daniel joined a company as a junior analyst. He had been in the role for 4 months when he started correcting the senior team in meetings. Not occasionally, consistently, with confidence, with specific terminology he had learned 3 weeks earlier, with the particular energy of someone who has recently discovered something and assumes they are the first person to have found it. His colleagues smiled and nodded. His manager made notes. Daniel interpreted this as respect. It was not respect. It was the specific silence of people who have learned that correcting overconfidence in public costs more than it's worth. Daniel was not stupid. That's the part most people get wrong about this. The people who think they are smarter than they are almost never unintelligent. They are people who have reached the edge of their actual knowledge without knowing they have reached the edge. Here is the psychology. In 1999, psychologists Daniel Dunning and Dunning-Kruger at Cornell University ran a series of experiments. They tested people on logical reasoning, grammar, and the ability to identify what was actually funny. Then they asked each person to estimate how well they had performed compared to everyone else. The results were striking. The people who scored in the bottom quarter, who had the least actual competence, overestimated their performance by an average of 30 to 40 percentile points. Plain English, the people who were most wrong were the most confident they were right. And here's the reason that is genuinely fascinating. It's not arrogance, it's a gap. The same skills you need to perform well in a domain are the same skills you need to accurately evaluate your own performance, which means that when someone lacks the skill, they also lack the ability to see that they lack it. They are not pretending, they genuinely cannot see the edge they are standing at. Think of it this way. Imagine learning to drive for the very first time. The first week, you feel terrified. Everything is happening at once. You cannot imagine ever feeling comfortable. But 6 months in, you feel like you're doing well. You stop noticing your mistakes because you don't yet have the skill to catch them. It takes years of driving, of close calls, of watching genuinely excellent drivers before you develop the precision to evaluate your own standard accurately. And most people never accumulate enough experience to complete that journey. They stop at confident. Here's the part that gets uncomfortable. A 2017 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that 93% of American drivers rate themselves as above average. Statistically, that's impossible. Half of all drivers are below average by definition, which means roughly 43% of people on the road are confidently driving with an inflated assessment of their own ability. That's not a small error. That's almost half the cars you pass every day. And the road is only one domain. The same pattern shows up in how people estimate their intelligence, their social skills, their emotional awareness, their financial judgment, their understanding of complex topics they read about once on the internet. The Dunning-Kruger Effect is not a niche phenomenon. It's a default setting of the human brain that gets corrected only through a specific kind of experience most people never seek out. Let's go back to Daniel. 8 months into the job, something changed. He was asked to lead a project, not observed from the edge, not commenting on what others were doing, responsible, accountable, in charge. And for the first time, the gap between what he thought he knew and what the job actually required became visible. Not because anyone told him, because reality showed him, directly, without softening, in the way that only genuine responsibility can. He told me later that the feeling was specific, not embarrassment, not shame, more like standing at the edge of something enormous and realizing for the first time that he couldn't see the bottom. That feeling, that specific vertigo of suddenly understanding how much you don't know, psychologists call it the valley of despair. It sits right after the peak of false confidence and right before the slow, genuine climb toward actual competence. Most people turn back at the valley. They decide the feeling is wrong. They find evidence that confirms they were right all along. They locate someone to blame for the discomfort, and they return to the peak, still confident, still wrong, but comfortable. The people who keep going through the valley, who sit in the discomfort of not knowing without reframing it as someone else's problem, those are the people who eventually develop the skill to accurately assess themselves. They are the ones who say, "I was wrong," without qualifying it. The ones who change their minds when the evidence changes. The ones who ask questions instead of giving answers when they are genuinely uncertain. Here's what to do with all of this, because there are two directions this knowledge can go. First, if you're thinking about someone else right now, someone in your life who runs this pattern loudly and consistently, the research is clear. You cannot correct Dunning-Kruger directly. Telling someone they don't know as much as they think almost never works, because the mechanism that would help them hear that is the same mechanism that is currently telling you you are wrong. What does work, slowly, imperfectly, but actually, is giving them genuine responsibility, real stakes, real outcomes, real accountability for what happens, not criticism, not correction, experience. Second, if you had even a moment of quiet recognition reading about Daniel, that's not a reason to spiral. That's evidence that your metacognitive ability, your capacity to think about your own thinking, is functional. The people who run Dunning-Kruger at its most extreme don't wonder if they might be doing it. They are certain they are not. The fact that you can ask the question, "Am I the person in this room who doesn't know what I don't know?" is already the beginning of an answer. Daniel runs his own department now. He's quieter in meetings than he used to be, not because he knows less, because he finally knows enough to understand how much more there is. There's a specific kind of intelligence that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't correct people in public. It doesn't fill silence with certainty it hasn't earned. It asks questions that sound simple and listens to the answers like they might contain something it hasn't considered. That intelligence isn't born. It's built, specifically, precisely, in the valley of understanding how much you don't know and choosing to keep going anyway. The people who changed the most in every room I have ever observed were never the ones who were the most certain. They were the ones who were the most curious. If this landed, the video on why the most intelligent people never feel like the smartest person in the room will make even more sense. It's there when you're ready.